just to start us off here. Again, as a reminder, my name is Sarah Snabel. I'm one of the co-owners of PROergonomics. And PROergonomics, well, I know that many of you logged in are clients of ours already. Some of you are new, we haven't met, but we are a team of ergonomists. We all hold or are working towards the Certified Professional Ergonomist designation. It's a relatively unique designation. It requires that education and work experience to even be able to apply for it. There's not that many of us across Canada. Our team at PROergonomics, we've all been consultants for several years. Many of us have worked as in-house ergonomists as well. So combined, I think we've touched on just about every industry out there, from manufacturing to healthcare to school boards, government, corporate offices. Our whole team are also registered kinesiologists as well, so that kind of adds to our education background and experience. So by addressing ergonomics in the workplace, ultimately, you are working to prevent MSDs, or those strains and sprains, and they are still the leading type of workplace injury across Ontario. Still, it's a huge cost to employers, so I can understand why many of you have come to our monthly webinars. You're looking for ergonomic resources and education. This webinar is a good example today of applying ergonomics in both a preventive and reactive manner. So preventive in the sense, well, maybe you've done a redesign, you have a lot of workers that no longer have that dedicated office space, or a lot of workers who are primarily working from their vehicle or out on the go in the field, or reactive, where you know that you now need to make some changes to help accommodate an employee who has an injury or is reporting discomfort. So you're trying to address something that's already come up. So, we love to connect with our current clients via our webinars, and if we haven't yet worked with you, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to talk with you about what you're working on ergonomics. We are super passionate about ergonomics. We really value our team approach. And with that, again, we always guarantee a high level of customer service as well. So back to today's webinar. So again, a reminder, I'm Sarah Snabel. I'm one of the co-owners of PROergonomics. And this month we're talking about ergonomics for workers on the move. So offices are changing. An office doesn't always look the same as it did 10 years ago, let alone 5 years ago. Technology is changing. We are seeing more and more laptops. That's been sort of the norm, that desktops are being phased out. But now we're seeing tablets even more. We're seeing a lot more smartphone use. Not only are we seeing more of those types of devices in the workplace, but we're also seeing workers who maybe weren't using computers at all in the past, who are now having to use some kind of mobile device, be it a laptop, a tablet, or a smartphone for their job tasks before. Recently I met with a couple of tradespeople. We were, I think it was electricians and HVAC, and they've never had to use a computer. They've been doing the job for 20 plus years, and the new system they've put in place is that all work orders will be distributed and closed out using a tablet. So that's something that's definitely new for them. The focus on today's webinar is definitely going to be on workers who use these types of devices. So tablets, laptops, even a little bit of smartphones, outside of the office or outside of that traditional cubicle setting. So these are our mobile workers. So they might have a dedicated space and they may not, or they're definitely not there all the time. This is my kind of agenda or outline for today. So again, just defining mobile offices, what is it that I mean? And I don't know if there's like an official definition, but in terms of what I'm going to be talking about today, I'll go through that, talk about who's using them, some of the issues, and really talk about some solutions or some considerations, because there's definitely not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution for these types of devices, but lots of questions that we can ask to help guide us in the right direction. So some stats that I found really are that in this day and age, we are talking maybe 73%. I think that's the stats I was getting, somewhere close to definitely over 2/3 of Canadians have mobile workers, or sorry, work on the go, work outside of that traditional office. They do some of their work, and I think it works out to about at least 3 days of the week is kind of where this 2/3 plus stat is coming from. Small companies were the most likely to have mobile workers compared to some of the bigger corporations. And in that same survey, again, they were looking at how often, how many days do you spend outside of the office or away from your traditional office? And again, smaller companies were saying more often that they have workers doing that, and it was working from home or in the field or on location at least 3 days a week. And so why, why is this happening? And it's likely, we can predict that this is probably going to happen even more in the future, have more workers on the go. I mean, companies are getting more comfortable allowing employees to work off site for a whole variety of reasons. I mean, there could be a ton of reasons maybe why your organization is doing it. A couple might, some reasons might be that, well, mobile devices are more accessible. They're more affordable. Wireless networks, cloud computing, access to all of that wireless network makes it easier to access your documents and applications no matter where you are. So you don't necessarily need to be in your office to be able to log on to your network. You can log on to your network via like a VPN or hotspotting, or Wi-Fi again is a lot more widespread. You can find a connection just about anywhere. So that's one reason, is that it's just more accessible. Other companies might have other reasons too, like maybe in a more of a downtown or a busy setting, they're actually finding the benefit that their workers aren't having to commute as much. So there's the extra time, the costs in commuting, getting stuck in that traffic gridlock. So allowing employees to work from home, or allowing them to work remotely, that mobile worker can actually improve productivity, especially at the beginning or the end of that traditional workday. People are, got stuck in traffic, they're late for their meeting, they're stressed because of the traffic or the accident they got stuck in, they're stressed because they need to leave at the end of the day to go pick up their kids. So finding that people can actually put in a full workday without having to do as much commuting. Lots of kind of commentary in the media too that allowing people to work remotely or to work from home is a way to attract and retain younger workers, that millennial generation. Now, I'm not necessarily going to talk about the whole generation thing here, but I mean, there's the point being, there are lots of reasons why we are seeing people work on the go or away from a traditional office. And probably the main reason being is just technology is changing, and it's possible to do it. And so we're kind of trying it out, and who knows if it'll regress back to a traditional office, but for now we've got information at our fingertips and we can work wherever. So when I'm talking about mobile offices today in this webinar, I'm kind of talking about some of these places. So anything that is not a traditional cubicle. So I don't know, maybe you're stationed, I mean, that's a picture of a van on the left side there with like a full-on desk in there. I'm not sure how many workstations you have that look like that, but maybe more of like a media setting. Maybe you have your staff who are traveling a whole ton, and it's quite normal for them to prop their laptop or their tablet up when they are, they're flying, they're in the back of the car, the back seat for their car service, they are at a hotel, they are propped up at a coffee shop, literally wherever they can prop up their laptop to get in, check a few emails or whatnot. That office could look, oh gosh, it could look anywhere, right? Anywhere where you've got a surface that you can set your laptop up. Mobile office, I might even also consider it to be these people who are holding a tablet and kind of having to input data on the go. So they may not be actually sitting down, they're literally trying to enter in their information or look up information on the fly, so walking real time. And this might be healthcare staff, like those pictures on the, sorry, that picture on the kind of in the middle there. I'm finding a lot more staff that I meet with in like long-term care facilities or in hospitals. They're always looking for ways that they can do their documentation in real time, like as quickly, you've got to document your patient care tasks as soon as it happened. And I know a couple places who have been trialing this tablet approach or even a smartphone approach to see if that helps them to do it a little quicker. A lot more inspectors or kind of that auditor role where they're out in the field, maybe having to fill out forms or checklists, and they can just quickly do it again on a tablet or a smartphone. I've seen tablets recently with some of the library staff. So again, it's a quick resource. The staff that I saw were actually wearing it kind of like a necklace or a shoulder strap. And that was something that they were using to kind of allow them to rove or roam about the library so that they could provide customer service like right there on the spot, as opposed to waiting for the library patron to come to them right at the desk. So for them, it was a way that they're trying to look at increasing or improving customer service. You might have your sales reps or even forklift operators who are using a tablet, like a tablet or a screen, a touch screen type device, that are getting their pick instructions or using it for their scanners. Seeing a lot more touch screen type devices in EMS vehicles, you know, for their GPS or mapping, for quick reference. You know, we're seeing versions of tablets and smartphones and laptops in a whole variety of industries now. So just kind of looking at, you know, I was trying to kind of dive down a little bit about, like, you know, we get a lot of questions about, well, how should we be managing tablet use, or how should we be managing, I mean, it's definitely more about tablets and smartphones these days. We've always gotten questions about laptops. I do find that those questions are kind of tapering off a little bit, because now the new thing is tablets. So how much is too much? And so-and-so is complaining about, you know, shoulder discomfort. What is it that we should be doing? So finding that tablets are still relatively quote unquote new in the workplace. And so we've got some preliminary reports on injuries, and they definitely seem fitting with the type of postures you see when people are using a tablet. So it's no doubt that people are getting neck, back, shoulder, wrist, I mean, even finger discomfort. You know, I've heard of things like iPad tendonitis, or I don't know, there's like a whole bunch of kind of made up names that are out there. But really, when you're looking at a tablet, when you're looking at your smartphone, you're in that hunched over posture, right? You're kind of like that, I don't know, what's like that caveman type of hunched over posture. So, you know, if you're using a tablet at work, you're using your smartphone, you're using your laptop, really, in many cases, like a tablet and a laptop these days, even a smartphone, like screen size doesn't even really vary that much, but we're seeing the same postures, and it's bad postures. Like, they're, from an ergonomic perspective, it's so far from neutral that I can only suspect that the frequency of these types of injuries, like neck, especially neck and upper back, are likely to increase. So it's important that we do look at our tablet use and try to think about ways that we might be able to use them better. So there's this one study that I found where it was looking at tablets, and it looked at 4 usage configurations. So it looked at using the tablet, holding it in your lap, holding it like with your hand just in your lap, probably your typical couch type posture, sitting with the tablet in your lap but using a case, so it's propped up ever so slightly, sitting with the tablet on the table, again in a case, so it's propped up a little bit. In all of those configurations, the individual was asked to do in some minor data entry. And then in the last configuration, they had it propped up to watch a movie. So there was less, I think they were asking them to do less data entry there, but again, propping the screen up a lot higher than in all of the other settings. So this study in particular only looked at head and neck postures. So just important to recognize that it didn't talk about, you know, health outcomes like how much screen time is too much screen time, and whether or not that affects your sleep or your health or your, you know, attention spans. Nothing about that. It was literally just looking at head and neck postures, not even looking at shoulder, wrist, anything like that. Just head and neck. And honestly, the results aren't really surprising. Basically that anything that was causing a neck posture of more than 45 degrees was increasing strain on the neck muscles. And we know that from other research studies, just in general, about postures, what's considered awkward, what's considered straining or damaging. There's research studies, there's case studies, anecdotal evidence. All of that shows that the more extreme the posture, or the more awkward the posture, then the greater risk of injury to your soft tissues, right? It's going to lead to increased strain. And this is the same in all joints. It doesn't matter, it be the neck or the shoulder. So tablet users, smartphone, you know, if you're the higher the user, the higher the potential risk you are at developing that neck discomfort based on current behaviors and tablet design. So the results from that study where I showed you the pictures, they're suggesting that with continuous use of tablets for longer durations, that you should really be focusing on placing the device on a higher surface with that steeper case angle. So I'm just going to flip back to that slide. So I mean, neck postures were the best in scenario D, when the person was just sitting there watching a movie on the table with the stand propped up nice and high, followed by, I mean, it kind of went in order, followed by C was slightly better postures for the neck, and then A and B. A in particular was the worst for the neck postures. So, I mean, that's not really surprising. So these steeper angles, great for the neck postures, but again, remember this study didn't look at shoulder or wrist or the gripping demands. And so I kind of wonder, they did kind of summarize that yes, putting it a steeper angle is better for the neck. However, these steeper tilt angles might not be that good if you're having to do continuous input for the hands. So again, I'm going to flip back to that picture, and again, you can see it, like neck posture is the worst in A and B, but shoulder posture is probably the best in A, and then shoulder posture actually gets the worst as you go through. So in D, you've got the best neck posture, that bottom right quadrant. But if you could imagine somebody doing input there, imagine where her shoulder would be, how her arm would be positioned if she was actually doing data entry. Shoulder postures are the worst in that case. So we definitely need to look for ways that we can still maintain this efficiency that tablets are promoting. We want to work with better posture and improved work methods. Otherwise, efficiency, productivity, it's all going to be reversed. So once an injury happens, it can be quite debilitating. It's definitely going to slow down efficiency and productivity, which is the exact opposite of what we were maybe going for by even implementing it in the first place. So there hasn't really been many guidelines or the like really provided related to tablet or smartphone use. And recently though, the CSA Office standard, this was new in December 2017, so it's always been CSA Office guidelines, but new in 2017 they released it as a standard. And the beautiful part about it is that they've updated it. It really does do a better job of kind of matching what today's workplaces look like. And it really does. It has a reference to mobile phone and tablet use. Still talks about laptops, but there was some commentary on that in the past in the guideline, but it talks specifically now about a reference to mobile phones and tablets, which is super exciting, especially for us as ergonomists who are always looking for kind of that solidified guideline, standard research or whatever to kind of back up some of our recommendations. I mean, we definitely go on work experience and just kind of our professional judgment in many cases, but to have that kind of as a backing is also good. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about those, what the CSA standard is saying related to tablet and mobile device use and laptops as well. But I want to talk a little bit. So we know that tablet posture is not so great. I mean, you can see even in the picture, you're holding it with one hand, you're looking down. Your wrist posture is not great depending on how you're handling it, how heavy your tablet is, how big it is. And laptops aren't really much different. So same type of thing, you're looking down, yeah, the screen is bigger, but you're still getting that bad posture or that awkward posture at the neck, the shoulders, and the wrists. Those are kind of the key areas. Well, like your neck, you're looking down at the screen, your back might start to round as you kind of lean forward to see the screen as well. I mean, mark my words, it doesn't matter if you are using a laptop, it doesn't matter if you're on the couch, if you're sitting on a park bench, if you're sitting at a boardroom table, even if you're using the laptop as your computer at your desk. Again, mark my words, it is impossible to get proper setup. You cannot work in neutral posture on a laptop. So neutral posture would be your neck looking straight forward, so looking straight ahead at your screen. It would have your shoulders relaxed. So you can see this guy in the picture, he's got his shoulders, I'd say his shoulders relaxed. His wrist, the one wrist that's typing, is straight, but compromising neck and potentially back posture as well. So he's got to look down, potentially even lean forward to see the screen. If you were to try to raise the screen up a little bit so that you weren't looking down as much, maybe help to improve your neck and back postures, the challenge is that it becomes really awkward for typing, right? So then you sacrifice your shoulder and your wrist postures. Sometimes the keyboard itself can just be kind of small, and that can affect wrist posture as well. You know, you kind of get your fingers or your wrist splaying out to the side, so that wrist deviation can occur just because the screen, or sorry, the keyboard itself is quite small. So that's some of the postures we're seeing. The postures we're seeing between laptop and tablet are actually quite similar. And then with tablet, we've kind of got the added strain of actually holding the device, and which can affect fatigue, right? You're holding that static posture, and then extra strain on the wrists and the shoulders as well. So, question. How can we improve postures when we're using tablets and laptops for all those workers on the go? So could be some of your workers, could be yourself, but knowing that laptops and tablets are not great for our neck, for our back, for our shoulder, for our wrist postures, this is a question that I pose to you listening in. So this would be a great time to get that chat bar open. And my question for you is, what are you doing? What have you been doing in your workplace to help with preventing injuries for the people who are using laptops and tablets? If you've had an injury that's already happened, what have you done as an accommodation for those? Maybe if they're using laptops or tablets, maybe in their vehicle. I want to hear from you. I want to know what kind of neat little tips, tricks, maybe accessories that you've kind of put in place that seem to be working for you. So you can use that chat bar, share your experiences. We want to hear your stories. In particular, I'm also really curious about tablets. Again, they're still relatively new in the workplace, and their use is definitely on the rise. Compared to, I mean, tablets were kind of the thing back in the day. Great, so I've got somebody saying that they provide an external keyboard and mouse. So when using a laptop, they recommend the use of an external keyboard and monitor, and then if no full-size monitor, we recommend that the laptop be placed on a riser of some sort. That's like that's like quoted right from the CSA standard. That's exactly what the CSA standard is now saying that we should do, and it's exactly what we should do. So if you're working on a laptop for any length of time, you should be trying to get it to kind of mimic or replicate like a desktop type setup. Okay, I've got another comment coming in saying, oh, that we've programmed. Hang on, let me just read this. Okay, yep, so they for their workers out in the field, they have their bylaw officers, they have created more drop-down menus for them. Aha, so that's interesting. So not necessarily changing how you use the tablet or how the postures for holding the tablet, but changing how you interact with it. That's an interesting strategy. Okay. I don't see much else coming in, so continue to share. I'm always curious what people are doing, especially with tablets, because again, it's still relatively new. So if I continue on here, sorry, let me get clicking. There we go. So laptops. So in terms of guidelines available on how you're going to set up your computer workstation, there is lots and lots of information out there on how to set up your typical desktop computer. Including the CSA standard. So again, it's always been office guidelines and now it's a standard. And there, how to use a laptop, there's a lot of information about that too. So anybody who is using a laptop as their desktop computer, like if that's your main hard drive and you are using it mostly at a desk, the recommendations are absolutely that you should provide equipment to mimic that desktop setup. So use an external monitor, like plug it in so that you're just using your, like even using a docking station. So you're dropping your laptop onto the docking station. You've got an external monitor, keyboard, and mouse. This is absolutely how I use my laptop actually, even right now. So I've got my laptop lid closed. I have a bigger monitor plugged into it with a keyboard and a mouse. And I really just have my laptop. The reason I have a laptop is because I need it for on the go, but most of the time when I'm in my office, I'm not actually working on the laptop. The screen's just, it's too small for me. So that's one way. And then maybe if you're more of a portable user, maybe you're using it on the go, then you want to consider some kind of a laptop stand, right? So you're propping the laptop screen up so that you can see it with better neck postures, and then plugging in a keyboard and a mouse for your use on the go. So again, if you are going to a lot of meetings, you travel a lot, and you find you're working from hotel rooms, or you're working at kind of these swing stations because you're visiting a client, you want to look for things that are relatively lightweight. That would be one feature that I would consider that you look into, because you want to be able to put it into your laptop bag and carry it with you, but you also don't want to be carrying around like 25 pounds of accessories. That would be trying to solve one issue and creating a whole new issue, because now your bag is so heavy with all the accessories that you've got to lug around. So look for stuff that's lightweight. And again, keep in mind size of things. That is something else that I would warn you on. Is there's a lot of keyboards out there that are kind of, they're advertised for like a tablet keyboard, or sorry, what's the word? Like a Bluetooth keyboard, for example, or a compact keyboard, a mini keyboard. It's great. It fits in your laptop bag or fits in your tablet case or something. You can use it on the go, but just be mindful of the size of those keyboards. And for how much typing you're actually going to be doing, because those keyboards can be quite small and they don't really allow for fabulous wrist postures. Same with mice. So if you get a laptop, like one that's called a laptop mouse or a mobile mouse or something like that, you'll find that the size of it is a lot smaller. So if you're using it for any length of time, I mean, the ergonomic guidelines are about having the mouse fit your hand size, so it should fit comfortably into the palm of your hand. And if it's too small, you'll actually end up using your fingers a lot more. So kind of that claw position. So just a couple of things that I would be mindful of when you're looking at accessories for those people on the go, if that's the route that you're going. The small stuff isn't always good. Yes, it's nice, it's a little lighter, it fits in your bag, but it may not necessarily be improving postures a whole ton. When you are thinking about tablets, the solutions aren't as kind of cut and dry, right? So for a laptop, it's kind of like you want to do your best to mimic a desktop. For a tablet, I would maybe suggest when you're not working at your desk, you're out in the field, like a tablet is great. It can improve efficiency. It saves time in your data entry. It saves time in transcribing notes. It gives us more ways to engage with our customers. You can help boost sales because you can, this picture on the left here is a real estate agent. He can show pictures of the house to his clients right then and there. You can do those those virtual tours. You've got a nice big screen on the tablet. Just information is so much more accessible. But we need to be thinking about the posture. So things that I would suggest in terms of, well, what kind of a solution do we need? Because I really don't think that it's a one size fits all here. So you want to think about the tasks, or really look at the tasks that they're doing. So if the tasks are mostly visual, like in the case of this real estate agent, or maybe it's sales, or you're somebody who is working a lot more on the visual side of things, you're a designer, you're showing a lot more pictures, then you're gonna want to focus on the neck posture, right? They're not doing as much data entry, so we don't need to focus on the keyboard or the mouse or those input devices. We want to focus a lot more on how they can be holding it and improving their neck postures when they're having to use the tablet. On the flip side, if you've got somebody who is using the tablet more for like data entry, so your healthcare workers or your bylaw officer, like that example where they're filling out checklists or forms in the field, those workers are mostly using it because they're trying to view the font size, or view a form, they're trying to view font, they're trying to input data. And in that case, you're going to want to focus a little bit more on wrist postures. So those would be kind of two key areas to focus on, are the task more visual or the task more keyboard entry. Because some of the challenge when it is like keyboarding, I mean, it can be that the form is small. You want to make sure it's designed and optimized for the tablet use. I think that's a fabulous idea to look for ways to actually adjust your form so that it minimizes the need for them to type. They can do more drop-down menus or some kind of quick selections, and then they're not having to do as much typing. In terms of solutions, well, there's a variety of things out there, but I think, if you're kind of determining if it's mostly visual, mostly keying, or some kind of a mixture, that's at least going to help to guide what type of an accessory or what type of a solution that you're going to go towards. Again, I mentioned that the CSA standard, well, it now does mention about tablet and mobile device use, and now it doesn't give you like you must or you shall do this, but it does say that any tablet or mobile device use, holding a static posture while viewing or inputting shall be, it does say this actually, I'll quote this, for users of a mobile phone or tablet, holding a static posture while viewing or inputting shall be limited to short durations. In the case of tablets, static postures shall be limited to 10 minutes or less. So there, does actually say shall for that specific one, static posture. So that means holding a posture without moving, right? So it could be your neck, could be your shoulder, could be your wrist. So holding an awkward posture should be, or holding a posture, sorry, definitely if it's awkward, should be limited to 10 minutes or less. And then it does list a few examples of things that you might want to consider. And it doesn't say which ones you necessarily have to do, because again, I think it comes down to you doing that assessment or an evaluation on, what's the frequency that your users are using tablets and mobile devices, and what is it that they're doing, right? Is it the visual? Is it the keying? Where are they using them? How long are they using them? But it does give a couple of suggestions. So suggesting that if you're having to do phone calls, that you use the hands-free. And now hands-free could be using your speakerphone option. It could be plugging in a headset or a microphone, something along those lines, just so that you're not having to hold the phone for the entire phone conversation. I mean, that's in line even with using a phone at your regular desk. Talks a lot about, gives a couple of commentary about postures. So again, trying to make sure that you have a neutral grip when you're holding the device. So trying to keep your wrists straight, trying to keep your fingers kind of not in that claw position, or not just using the fingertips. Also talks about trying to maintain a neutral spine posture. So again, more upright, less hunched over. And it doesn't say specifically how you're going to do that, but again, that's where you're kind of evaluating, what your workers are doing, where they're using it, and what type of a device might work. There are things like tablet stands or, arm mounts, so depending on where you're using it, like in your vehicle, for example, there could be an arm mount that means that it sits up a little bit higher. You can adjust the angle so that you're not having to use it on your lap. Now that's not necessarily going to be that applicable for the people who are walking around, but maybe what we need for them is some kind of a pouch or a strap so that they're not having to hold it for as long, that they have the ability to kind of let go of the tablet. And if they don't have a work surface to set it down on, that they can still let go of that and it's still secure and kind of attached to them, right? So carrying straps, maybe, I've seen a bunch of different gadgets for handheld straps at the back. Now, I'm not sure which one I think I like the best, but that's where I'm always kind of curious, what have you guys tried? I know on smartphones, you can get those, what are they called? Those, oh, I'm forgetting the name. Oh, the pop socket, the little pop out things on the back, all of those things, which I think are kind of interesting. Like, I don't know, I'm not sure if I would say that I fully recommend them, but I am intrigued on whether or not they improve postures for your wrist when you're holding your phone, or does it make it easier to hold them and then you hold your phone for longer? I don't know, but there are a lot of devices out there that I think are sort of interesting, and if you guys have any feedback on things like that maybe you've tried, either at work or personally, again, I'm curious to see if you're finding that that's actually a help, if you're getting some positive feedback. Other things, maybe even trying to use the predictive text, so like less typing. I guess that's kind of in line with that comment that came in earlier about using more drop-down menus. So trying to simplify your checklists or simplify the forms that you're using so that you are doing minimal writing. You could use the predictive text or that voice-to-text function. Possibly even using an external keyboard. Again, depending on where you're actually using your tablet, you need to know if this is actually going to make sense for you guys or for your workers, or maybe even using a stylus. So this is something actually I started using last week. I got one of those pens that has a stylus built into the other end, and I thought, oh, I'm going to try that. So I started using that for when I was using my phone, and I actually quite liked it. I found that I was maybe a little bit of a slower typer, but I was a lot more accurate. And I did find that it did change how I was holding my phone, right? Because now my hands, I didn't have to grip it with two hands. I don't know, it definitely changed how I was interacting with it. So I'm going to continue with trialing that. And I've definitely seen styluses used more, kind of depending on the area. You've seen a lot of styluses are pretty common in kind of like the graphic design when they're using their big, it's not a tablet kind of in this sense, but like their graphic design drawing tablet. And then also ways to type with your fingers. So this was something actually I thought was kind of an interesting thing. This is right from the CSA standard. So it suggests that you should alternate between using your thumbs and your other fingers to type. So when possible, you should try to use your fingers to type instead of your thumbs. So they're suggesting that you place your tablet down on a hard surface and then actually type, or holding it in one hand and then texting with the other hand, as opposed to using just one hand only. And then if you do have to use your thumbs, or if that's just your technique, is make sure that you're using the whole pad of your thumb and not just the tip, because then it can create awkward thumb postures. So if you guys haven't checked out the CSA standard yet, not that I'm like promoting necessarily the CSA standard, but I did, like, if you've been on the fence at all about, purchasing it, because maybe you've bought one in the past and you found that the reviews or the updates that were happening were just too similar. This one actually is, it's different, and there's lots of good stuff in it, and it's shorter. So it's, instead of 300 plus pages like the old guideline was, this one is somewhere around 100 pages, I think. I mean, it's significantly shorter without cutting out data, without cutting out information. Anyways, I've been thoroughly impressed with it, and I really like how they've modernized it. So, kind of coming to the end here. Look at that. I'm on time today. Definitely not going to keep you guys late today unless you happen to have a pile of questions. But in that case, what I will tell you that we are nearing the end. So if you have any questions, now's the time to kind of start typing them in. So just thinking about what you might be able to, where do you go from here? So look at what you guys have in place in your own workplace. So do you have workers who are using tablets, smartphones, laptops, these mobile devices, whatever they might be? And, a lot of companies will have their own policies or their own guidelines or whichever on how to use these devices. But I do find that they tend to focus on privacy, confidentiality. So things like making sure that you're logged into their VPN network, making sure your network's secure. They focus on personal use, like social media during work time. Sometimes they don't really focus a ton on health and safety beyond, you shouldn't be on your phone while driving, or you shouldn't be using your tablet or whichever while driving. But a lot of them miss the boat on referencing ergonomics. So in terms of the postures, I mean, there are still workplaces that I go into and the person they work at the office 90% of the time. Like maybe they do a field visit or a meeting outside the office like once a week for an hour or two. But their main computer is a laptop and they're working at a desk. I still see it, albeit it's less often, but I still see it. And so I mean, that's a good sign of needing just like a good office ergonomics policy or a guideline. But that same policy should extend to mobile devices as well, especially if you're finding that that's something that's growing in your industry or in your workplace. Make sure that you're prioritizing who has an actual need for that level of connection while they're on the road or when they're out of the office. So not everybody, like a lot of times we just have them because they're there, and really thinking about who needs it. And again, like I mentioned before, kind of evaluating what they're doing with it. So if someone only has to be able to check in, respond to occasional emails, a smartphone makes sense. You don't necessarily need to think about the tablet or whichever. And because it's so infrequent, or, in this case, maybe you've done your assessment, you've deemed that it is relatively infrequent, maybe having to get them all these extra accessories and whatnot isn't really warranted because, they're just checking emails here and there. But on the other hand, if accessing the network or accessing certain files, documents is really an integral piece of your business, that employee has to be able to review documents, photos, maps, easily access the internet from anywhere where they're working, then you're going to want to consider the type of device, right? Is it a smartphone? Is it a tablet? What type of accessories are we going to want? And make sure that your policy or your guideline or whatever you're putting in place there, that it acknowledges that you are going to do that evaluation or assessment to make sure that you are providing the right tools to do the job. Right, so my suggestion is always to evaluate with that ergonomic eye. So we do okay with the privacy, we do okay with the health and safety in terms of the driving, or gosh, there's one client we work at and they have a policy where you're not allowed to look at your smartphone while walking. So they have a big enough site that they kind of call it a campus, but they want people to be alert while walking, which is super smart, but you will actually get in trouble if you are caught looking at your smartphone while walking on campus, even if you're on the sidewalk. So, just an example of kind of where policies can go. And that's for safety. I mean, not necessarily for ergonomics, but it is good ergonomics too. It gives you that chance to actually have your head upright and looking straight ahead. So anything that involves change, whether you are developing a policy or not, even if you're not developing that, but education is really a good step for prevention. So thinking about just putting out some news briefs, some safety talks, some information to your staff, maybe even doing a little session to them on what is good or bad posture, how to limit screen time or how to limit mobile device use. All of that stuff is really good. Education is really important, right? You can't just put something in place and expect that everybody is going to know how to use it. We definitely need to have that education component. And then make sure you're monitoring and following up. So let's say you do implement some kind of tablet stand or a stylus or a new app that does some great voice to text. It's important to follow up with that and make sure that it's actually working as intended. Are you seeing postural changes? Is it affecting productivity or efficiency, maybe for the good or the better or the worse, right? You want to make sure that you're getting that follow-up. Again, because it is still relatively new, there's not really a lot of set guidelines. There's some guidelines on how things to address, but it's again not a one size fits all on how you're going to address these types of issues. So monitoring, following up is always great to make sure that that your solutions are actually working as intended. So now is the time for some questions. So I'm going to stay online for a little bit here so that you guys have some time to type in questions. Hopefully you've been thinking of these brainiac questions while I've been talking here. I'm curious if you're using tablets in your workplace. I'm curious what you're doing. Are you seeing a lot of injuries? I'm curious. I mean, I love talking about ergonomics. But I like the sharing and the problem solving because, I come up with these ideas, but then when I go and I hear what other people are doing, sharing all of that information really helps to, think of new ideas or how you might be, oh, that's a great idea. I wonder if that would apply to this person or this place. So I'll open the session up to questions now. Please use that chat bar, type in. Thanks so much for attending. I hope you did learn some tips that you can apply to your workplace to address, some of the requests or some of the concerns that maybe you're getting or having about mobile devices for those people who are working on the go. I mean, it's definitely way more common that people aren't having dedicated office space anymore. And I probably could have taken this webinar in a zillion different directions. I mean, we could have talked too about, vehicle, like a lot more vehicle. Where do you put the laptop in a vehicle? But I was really curious to talk a little bit more about tablets. It seems to be really, I don't know, maybe it's what I've been doing a lot lately. I've been seeing a lot of tablet use lately, and definitely a little bit of vehicle ergonomics too, like the laptop in the vehicle, but a lot more I'm seeing even the places where I was seeing a laptop mounted into the vehicle, they're now real. I mean, obviously that is great for efficiency, but like the twisting, the looking down, the postures that it takes to do that, they're actually finding that they're now getting away from that and implementing more tablets. So I don't know, just with what I've been doing over the past like 2 months, where I was kind of like prepping for this webinar, I was like, well, I'm just seeing so much tablet. And so that's kind of where I took this webinar today. If you have any other questions, maybe you don't want to type in the chat bar there, but don't hesitate to give me or my colleagues a call or email anytime if you do have any other questions, or if you think of something after the fact. Definitely we like to chat about that kind of stuff anytime. We always welcome your questions and comments. So let me just double check the question bar here. Sorry, I'm trying to open the question. I don't know how to open the question. Oh, great. Okay, so I've got here. Sorry for that. I'm trying to figure out how to read my questions. So I have one comment that we haven't really experienced any injuries yet, but this is very helpful as we're introducing tablets now. Great. That's great. I'm glad that this was helpful. And as you kind of go through that process in introducing tablets, again, keep in mind what they're going to be doing, right? The visual versus the data entry, and any ways that you can kind of optimize their input. I think that's really great. Another comment coming in saying, we have switched many workers to tablets for use in their vehicles. We are struggling with compact vehicles and trying to work on their tablets in the vehicle. Yes, you know what? Working in a vehicle, like using your car as an office, is just, you can't get good posture in it either. There's just really not enough space. There's a lot of workers that will have laptops in their vehicles. I'm thinking like your EMS, your police, a lot of them have their tablets in there. But no matter where you try to position that tablet, you end up twisting, you end up looking down. Anytime you've got to do forms, like I know recently I was talking with some paramedics, and what they've got is a small little, I don't know if it was called a Tough Book, maybe that wasn't the brand name, but a small one. And although they can enter information while they're sitting in the vehicle, they tend to try to bring it in. So if they're in the hospital or at their office, they try to, or kind of at the station, sorry, they bring it in and try to do their form entry while standing up, just to break it up. I saw another paramedic service too, where the arm that's mounted in the center console there was only positioned for the passenger. I mean, which does make sense. I mean, your driver, you shouldn't be using it while you're driving anyways, but most often you see it so that it's kind of positioned for the driver, but your passenger really does have more flexibility. So in that case, I thought that was interesting that they had the mount positioned so that it was more accessible to the passenger. Compact vehicles are tough too. I did an assessment once for a company where they were renewing, I don't know if that's the right word, but they were looking at their fleet vehicles anyways. And they were looking at, should we get all the same fleet vehicles? We want all of our, it was for inspectors. We want all of our inspectors to use a laptop in the vehicles, and we want to know which vehicles are best for this. And so, I mean, I looked at a car, I looked at a minivan, I looked at an SUV, and just kind of tried to give them some feedback from that ergonomic perspective. And so although they don't need a minivan to carry around the supplies, like they don't need their space for that, and yeah, maybe it's not ideal for gas efficiency, the minivan did allow for the quote unquote best postures for using the laptop in the vehicle, just because there was more space in the console. So there was a little bit more leg space that you could move the seat further back. You could kind of reduce the degree of twisting. Twisting was still happening, but it just wasn't as cramped of a posture. And then the car, I think, kind of goes without saying that it was the quote unquote worst. It had the most twisting, the most cramped postures. For taller people, it wasn't really possible for them to get back any further to try to reduce the twisting. And then the SUV was somewhere in the middle, but it had more, you know, so we were looking at kind of how much adjustability could you get in that laptop stand. So yeah, compact cars, compact vehicles with laptops in the center, tablets in the center are definitely tricky. Great. Let's see if there are any other questions here that maybe I missed. Oh, lots of you have commented that you do provide an external keyboard for laptops or for tablets, so that's great. There's a couple. I tried a Bluetooth keyboard once, actually, like a small Bluetooth keyboard, because I thought, oh, this will be great for my smart TV that I bought. And you know what? I hate it. There's a couple of things that I don't like. I didn't mind that it was small, because I thought, you know what, it's really just for the TV. It's not really a lot of entry. But just an odd thing that I didn't like is that the keys felt really slippery and they were circular. And so I didn't really think that that was going to be a big deal until I tried using it. But I'm a horrible typer on this keyboard because the keys feel slippery and they're a different shape than what I'm used to. Anyways, just kind of a little side note again when you're considering different accessories, like keyboards or whatnot to put in your bags. Great. I think I've addressed all the questions. Thanks so much, everybody, for your feedback and your questions. And again, if you do have any further questions, you can always send us an email or give us a call. So we're info@proergonomics.ca. You can check out our website. Any questions, anytime. I will direct you to, just kind of as we're signing off here, I hope that you have a great day, and I hope that you can join us next month for our webinar. So we're going to be talking about manual material handling, and talking about maybe some out-of-the-box ways that you might be able to address this type of manual material handling training requirement in your workplace. So, you know, there's always that old adage of lift with your knees, not with your back, and lots of posters and diagrams out there of people lifting these boxes and what is good posture or not. But, you know, when you work in a place where a box is not necessarily the thing that you lift every time, you know, you're lifting a bag, you're lifting a long piece of lumber, you're lifting, I don't know, something really awkward that's not a box. How are you going about that training? So next month, that's what our webinar is going to talk about. Hope that you can join us then. And again, thanks everybody. Thanks so much for attending. I hope to see you again soon. Have a great day.